Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, Attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today, Dr. Ann Kinney. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it immensely because you're going to bring a slightly different twist to our show today. Because not only are you a doctor, but you've also had to care for someone with dementia, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. And because you're going to come at it from a different experience than just a layperson who doesn't have your medical background. So I'm super excited to have you on the show today. And so given that, that you're a geriatrician and a palliative care physician, that's a whole mouthful, huh? And so, and the big thing is that you were a daughter that took care of your mom,
Yeah.
So talk to us about how is it different, or did you notice it was different as far as, how you approach things?
Yeah. I, as a geriatrician, I knew it was coming, as my mom was living with cognitive loss. And then as she began to die from it, I knew it was coming then too, because I'm a palliative care doctor or a hospice doctor. And I knew the things that were coming, and I knew what I should be doing. But as a daughter, I didn't see it coming at all. I definitely made many mistakes, and didn't realize that I was going to have to do the grieving and the just kind of live all the emotions. I didn't do that well. I did it poorly, and I had to take my advice to build that team, get that support, take some time for me. All the things that I tell my patients and their families to do. I had to have friends bop me upside the head and tell me to do it, take care of myself too, as I was supporting my mom. Because if I didn't support myself, I wasn't going to be supporting my mom at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I preach to all of our caregivers. You have to take care of yourself first. Super
And
important.
and they all say they get it, and then they don't do it, and then they
Mhm.
end up like me. And so I I I both preach it and didn't do it, and then I had to live with the consequences.
Yeah, and my grandfather was telling me he was doing all those things, and then he had a stroke. So his body said he wasn't,
Right,
and
exactly.
so yeah,
Yeah,
so you
and
have to.
I fell into a depression. Then I wasn't there for my mom or my kids or my job. So, yeah. I'm so sorry about your grandfather's stroke.
And so, well, I'm thankful, and I tell people a lot of this. I'm thankful that it didn't affect his brain.
Mm,
It affected his body, but he up to the day he passed, he was still sharp as a tack,
good.
and so and uh, and very
Pastors miss him.
mischievous in his older age. So so it was that was good, and we got to spend a lot of close time together and a lot of good stories
Good.
that I had never heard before. So that was always good.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
caring for your mom, did you find that it was easier with you being a doctor, or do you think it's harder because you have so much knowledge?
I think there, in some ways, it was easier because I did know what was coming. Like I knew. Sometimes I think some of the hardest part about caregiving is not knowing what's down the road. You not knowing quite what is going to come next. And so that fear of, what if I'm doing it wrong? What if I'm doing too much or too little? And that I didn't have that, because I could see things and know, I could see that this is typical, and it might be a little different. Everybody's different all the time, but I think in that way it was easier. And for me, though, I think it was the emotional piece that was harder, because I mean, a parent, or a spouse, or a child, these are deep relationships. And, to be an effective doctor or lawyer, there's this, you still are vulnerable and you're still there and in it, but there's a bit of a barrier because you know that if you cross that barrier, you're not a very effective doctor or lawyer or and so you know that where that boundary is. And when that and so you kind of stay you're still engaged and caring and empathic and all that, but you know there's a separation. I lost that separation when it was my mom and just I didn't have enough skill sets to get through it. And I think as a caregiver, I didn't realize you do have to build some of those skills in taking care of your own emotions while you're caring for somebody who's in need and caring for your making sure that you have that a bit of separation because when somebody else needs you, you may get enveloped in it and that to the point that you forget yourself, like your grandfather forgot himself, uh, and that part I wasn't ready for, and I'm even in the caregiving books, I know they say the words, but I'm not sure. I don't. It's hard to get that across. So I try to get that across in stories, because I find that the stories help tell it. And so in like the books that I've written, they're very much based in the stories of people I've seen. What helped me finally, once I kind of realized how I wasn't doing it well, was going back to like not everybody that I have the privilege of being partner in care. Some of those family members do a beautiful job. And I started going, what do they do that I'm not doing? So I'll use you now as my positive example. Um, and and so those stories are in the book that I wrote as well because those people helped me see, oh, there's a better way. There's a way to do this well that I don't know if there's a training manual for that.
So let's talk about caregivers. So we talked earlier about caregivers, have a hard time, asking for help. So what kind of suggestions do you give your families that you counsel, as far as helping building that team?
Okay. When usually I tell people to kind of start with a core couple of people to help them brainstorm because more minds think better. So if you have a favorite friend or a close sibling or and a parent that you feel you can trust, sit down and just write down everything you can think of who you can think of that could be helpful. And then um, I kind of think of it as circles. Like, so you have your core couple that you can rely on to help you think about what the team should be. And they'll help you think, okay, these are family members. Here's their strengths. Here's what you can ask them to do. And then what about the people outside that? How about friends, people in your church, maybe any other social group that you handle? What might they be able to do? Um, don't forget the intergenerational, like what can those grandchildren do, like, that technology-wise or whatever, and then the professionals, like, who else can you who beyond your friends and family, and you'd be surprised if you get out of your own way, how big that community can become, and people wanna help. We think we're gonna ask and it's gonna be a burden, but if you think about when you help someone else and how much joy that gives you and how much fulfillment that gives you, I think we would be less likely to not ask somebody if you think about, I love it when somebody asks me for help and it's such it's so easy to give it and it's not a burden. But we tell ourselves these little stories in our head so we don't build that team because we're saying, oh, um, those people will think I'm asking too much. Most likely not. And that's why I think having those couple people to help you brainstorm and kind of get you out of your own way to begin building that asking muscle.
And very good advice. A lot harder to do, I think, for a lot of people. So, and I see a lot of clients in my office that have, family members that are declining, and so and I had one here recently. As I was telling him, "What do you do for fun?" He says, well, I don't know. I just, I'm retired. What do you want to do? He said, I really want to learn to play the guitar. Perfect. Hire the caregiver to come in on those days and go take guitar lessons. He goes, what? I'm like, I want you to go take guitar lessons.
Mhm.
And I'm like, you have to. It's important. You have to do it.
Mhm.
I promise you, you're going to feel better, so.
Yeah. And then he can bring that guitar back home and be practicing with his family member around. There'll be joy in the house that wasn't, he'll be enthusiastic. The ripple effect is amazing when you take a little bit of time to take care of yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. So,
Yeah.
but it's great for hobbies, but what about exercise? And so, because I know it's hard to get people to move. I know when I hit my recliner, sometimes it's a little hard to get me to move.
Oh my goodness, yes. My favorite thing to do is to turn on a yoga video and lay on the floor and watch them do yoga. Um,
That's great. I thought you were going to tell me you did yoga, and I was like, I'm so jealous.
no, I, you know, Adrian does such a good job.
Yeah, yeah. Way to go,
Um,
Adrian. Yeah.
um, so that is one of the things that I definitely had trouble with when, and I needed to do exercise partly for my mental health and partly for my physical health, as my mom was, and I had to be with my mom a lot of the time. Um, and so I just found ways, my mom and I would put on videos of, not the yoga ones I watch from the floor, but like chair aerobics. And early on, she would be doing them with me because she wasn't stable on her feet. And mostly we would be exercising our core, laughing at how goofy the videos looked with their 1980s, like neon wristbands and headbands. Just imagine Olivia Newton-John getting physical, that kind of thing. What's
Yeah.
going on? But I mean, I could do stuff with my mom. We would turn on videos and do things together. She may not be as actively engaged, but she thought she was, which was great. The other thing is I needed to be outside sometimes, and so I had a baby monitor, or a monitor to watch her, and she was sleeping quite a bit, and I would just go outside and walk around my block, where I could see her but be close enough. And I warned my neighbors that I might be jumping through. If she woke up, I needed to get back home faster than I could get her. I could have run, but I don't know, maybe not. Uh, but I actually would go through people's yards to get back to my mom if I needed to get there quickly. And I mean, even if I went out on the back deck, just again, partly to get some of that nature, just the air. And then I was much more likely to move. I would turn on, just radio and dance. I had to, I had to work at it though. Like you said, that recliner calls to you. And, but if you think, I just need to do this for 10 minutes, the 10 minutes 3 times a day gets you that 30 minutes of exercise that's recommended. And it doesn't have to be 30 minutes at a time. I rarely could find 30 minutes at a time. So I did like these 10 minutes of dancing. And again, it would make my mom like laugh because I would just get goofier and goofier, just trying to get her to be entertained. Um, and and it got me what I needed.
And so, well, that's great. I was thinking about when you were talking about, doing goofy dancing, because I have the grandson, the youngest grandson, he's 2, he'll be 3 in September. And so the other night I picked him up and said, let's dance, so I'm twirling him around and everything. So this morning some music came on. He goes, let's dance, so.
Right. And that keeps you
And
moving, right?
it does keep you moving, a little dizzy, but definitely kept me
Uh,
moving.
right.
So,
I had a patient and his caregiver, um, the husband was the caregiver and his wife was living with cognitive loss. And he would dance with her all the time. He would just, he'd be trying to cook something in the kitchen, and if she would, it would be that time of day that she wasn't feeling well, and he'd think, we can't be cooking right now, we need to be dancing. So he would just dance her around the house. And if I came into their room, into the clinical room, and he would be dancing with her in the clinical room, and he'd go, she was just getting a little, she, so he would just dance her out of any kind of frustration or agitation that she had. And it was so great, much better than medicine.
Always good, and always good. Everybody loves to dance, and so everybody.
Everybody.
So, now that I've got you, talking about lots and lots of different topics, let's talk about, from a doctor's perspective about medications.
Okay.
And so, because families are often concerned whether they should continue medicines, not medicines. I had a client who was a doctor and he stopped the medications because he said the side effects were worse than her losing her memory. So he said the side effects were just too much. He didn't want her to have to go through that. So, what was your perspective?
Okay. So when it comes to living with dementia, you live for many, many, many years, often with dementia, and can live pretty well. But once you get to the point where you begin to either die from dementia or there are side effects from the medications for dementia at this time are just band-aids. They're not that beneficial, honestly, most of the time. So if there's any side effects, it's probably it's worthwhile to stop, see what happens. There can be a bit of a drop in thinking, but um, but most of the time there is not. There's a point though when you're at later stages. So at the point where um, you're moving from not saying very many words to not walking very well, at that point, the research shows that the medications are not effective and they likely should be stopped. I mean, there's this is something you should talk to your doctor about, and there's caveats, but most of the time, the medicines at that point are no longer beneficial and are just setting you up for having more side effects. Honestly, with my mom, I stopped many of her medicines. She was on My mom had a mix of Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia. And there was a point where she started to die from her dementia. And I was like, we need to stop some of these cardiac medicines because they're not helping her any longer. She's still having strokes. She's still having issues with her heart. And the medicines may be causing more trouble than good. My siblings took quite a bit of convincing that that's not a bad idea. And but honestly, once we stopped those medicines, she had a huge improvement in her quality of life because there were side effects that she wasn't able to report to us. She
Yeah.
started eating better. She had been vomiting intermittently. I'm sure it was a side effect from one of her meds. She was dizzy. I think it was a side effect from one of her meds. I mean, you could tell she was dizzy because she would be walking and then, grabbing for the wall. She couldn't articulate that to me, but I could see signs of it. I took these meds away and she did so much better for quite a bit of time. And so I call that the bounce you can get after you stop medicines. My mom had an extended bounce. I was happy to see it. And I've seen it in so many other people. Medicines are often kept because people say, I don't want to rock the boat. They need it for prevention. But there's a point where you're in the disease where what are you preventing?
Yeah.
We're getting in the way of dying. And it's okay to live well with dementia, but when it's time to die from dementia, do you want to stay in that dying state for a longer period of time? Most people don't. They
No.
they want to shorten that period. If we can stay in that part where we're living well, great. But let's shorten the part where let's not let medicine get in the way of a natural death.
Yeah, I'm with you. We preach quality of life here,
Exactly.
absolutely quality of life. And so,
Yeah.
so I also heard you talk about not sending your mom to the hospital when it got close to the end.
Yeah.
And so, how hard is it to make that decision from a daughter's perspective and then from the doctor's perspective?
You know, I think maybe that is one of the advantages to being the doctor is that I have seen so many people with cognitive loss go to the hospital. The hospital causes more trouble than good. They come in because they're dehydrated or they have a urinary tract infection or some kind of infection, and they it should be a very simple hospitalization, but because of their cognitive loss and that people don't know them and don't know their ins and outs because they're not going to be able to communicate as clearly. Uh, they get treatments that they don't need. They get poked and prodded by people they don't know. They get frightened. And so it wasn't hard to keep my mom from the hospital, I have to tell you, at all, because I didn't feel like I was limiting her care. I thought I was increasing her care. If she got sick, we still cared for her. We put cool washcloths on her forehead. We held her hand. We gave her medicines that may make her more comfortable. But she was being cared for by me or somebody she knew, a caregiver, a paid caregiver that she knew and loved and trusted. And there wasn't this up and down and agitation. It was much easier to keep her home. And I realized that I could keep her home and still deliver really good care. I had hospice come in when she started to develop pneumonias, which can happen as you can no longer swallow effectively at the latest stages of dementia. And you don't have to even be swallowing food. It could just be, just your own spit can cause a pneumonia. And hospice was able to give me like medicines that help with air hunger, and she was great, and she recovered from people were like, if you don't send her, she's going to die of pneumonia. I was like, I bet not. And she lived through several pneumonias and was up and back on her feet, so quickly, because she wasn't sent to the hospital, tied down, given medicines for that agitation. It was much more peaceful, much more pleasant. And then when it was her time, she didn't have to go. And she went to the hairdresser one day and then started to actively die as soon as her hair was done. I was like, oh, yes, there she is. Her nails are done. Her hair is done. She's ready to leave this planet. And she was gone within 48 hours. It was, but like one of her and then she died very peacefully and very beautifully because, she looked all coiffed.
That's fantastic. I told my daughter, I said, make sure that my hair looks good. Okay. Because she does my hair. I said, make sure my hair looks good. That's the only thing I asked, so,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
but you got a book, Making Tough Decisions About End of Life Care and Dementia. So how can somebody get the book?
It's available on any place, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere you can find books online. I doubt it's on the shelves. Nobody really thinks about buying a book about end of life and dementia for a light read, but it actually isn't as scary as it sounds. It is full of stories. Every chapter starts with the story of my family and the things we went through. And it has many, many stories of the people that I've cared for over the years. And so it's not a difficult read. And I think it has some tips that can help people as they do make those tough decisions.
Now, if somebody wants some coaching, talk to you, get tips, things like that, how do they find you?
Okay. I have a website called togetherindementia.com. So it's a long one to type, but togetherindementia.com. And you can find me there and just send me a little note and we can talk about whether coaching would be worthwhile or not.
Okay. You also have an email, right?
I do. Dr. Ann at togetherindementia.com. So it's DRANNE. It's naked without the E at the end. At togetherindementia.com.
So, Dr. Kenny, I appreciate so much you being on the show today because it's so good to have a different perspective, from, with your background and everything. So I just want to thank you so much for being on the show and look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.